So let's talk about Borderlands 3. So what you're seeing on screen right now is actually from like the first hour of the game because of course I didn't want to show you guys any spoilers of the game. So just take that into consideration when you're watching this video because I don't want to spoil the game for you. Actually, in my main gameplay, I'm actually like I think 25 hours into the game. So there you go. I'm pretty far into Borderlands 3 as we speak. But before I talk about the actual core mechanics of the game and how I feel about Borderlands 3 as a whole, I actually want to talk about performance because boy do I have a lot to say when it comes to the performance of Borderlands 3. So the footage that you're seeing on screen as well is going to be console footage, and you're actually seeing footage from a PS4. You're actually seeing PS4 base system, so the PS4 Slim and not the PS4 Pro. So take that into consideration when you're watching this video. Also, I do want to say this. My capture card does not record in 60 FPS. It is a locked 30, so take that as it is as well. You may not be seeing the full performance of the game. But when it comes to the performance of the game, when I first booted this game up, I will have to say I was encountering a host of a lot of different issues. My main issue with this game was the fact that my frame rate was all over the place. I was getting 25 frames per second, 35 frames per second, and I was wondering what was going on. I finally fixed the issue. So basically my issue was I had HDR turned on, and for some odd reason HDR was really messing up my game. I don't know why HDR specifically was messing up my game because I didn't think turning on such a simple thing as HDR would mess up the game, but yes, indeed HDR was making my frame rates really bad and unstable as hell, and that's really unfortunate since HDR makes your games look better, at least in terms of the color depth and everything like that. And my TV does support HDR, so that's something very interesting as well. I don't know if it's just me that's having these problems or other people that are having these problems, but yes, I was encountering these problems for myself. So basically all I did was turn off HDR, and once I turn off high dynamic range, my game pretty much went back to 30 frames per second, and for the most part my game does run at a stable 30 frames per second most of the time. It doesn't seem like it's 60 frames per second. If you want somewhere close to 60 frames per second, I do believe that's possible, but you will have to use something like the PS4 Pro or the Xbox One X or the PC version of the game. That's when you're going to see frame rates higher than 30 frames per second. I do have to comment one thing. Even though I do still get a solid 30 frames per second out of Borderlands 3, I do have to say that this game is still not the best when it comes to performance, and it still does have quite a few performance hiccups with this game. The biggest thing to take away from Borderlands 3's performance is going to be that when you're actually in the menus of the game, the menus are quite laggy when you're going to your skill tree, when you're going to your inventory, when you're going to the map. Everything does seem to lag quite frequently. And does that break the experience? Of course it breaks the experience, but it's not unplayable and it doesn't really ruin it too much, and it's not like you still can't go through all the menus in the game. I just wanted to throw that out there because it lags almost every time I go into a menu when it comes to this game. But going back to performance, the reason I said this game is still not that great when it comes to performance is the fact that I was in one of the later boss fights in this game, and the problem with one of the later boss fights in this game, for some reason my game halted to an extremely bad 20 frames per second, I do want to say, and it was pretty much virtually unplayable at that point. So all I could really do was turn off my PS4. I waited a little bit, restarted my PS4, and that pretty much fixed the issue for me, and the game went back to 30 frames per second. But that's something you may encounter in parts of the game where the game halts to like 20 frames per second. I really do feel like Gearbox and 2K really need to patch this game as fast as possible, because I feel like in the state it is, it's not the greatest performing game, and it still has a host of different problems when it comes to this game, and that's kind of unfortunate since they had this game or they were working on this game for quite some time. I really do feel like they do need to fix the performance, because I'm quite honestly still disappointed. It plays at 30 frames per second most of the time, but then a lot of times you're experiencing a lot of these different frame rate issues. Now when you're watching this footage, I think I've already said this, maybe not, but you may see some performance issues in this gameplay, because I did notice it when I was actually when I was actually editing this video and trying to put this video together, I did notice that there were some hiccups in the gameplay and it wasn't a solid 30 frames per second. So you can definitely tell it's not locked, but it does play mostly at locked 30 frames per second. Now that I actually got all that out the way, I actually want to talk about the main core gameplay of Borderlands. Now, when it comes to this video, I'm not going to talk about how Borderlands plays because Borderlands is a series that's been out for God knows how long. It's pretty much been out since the mid to late 2000s, so let's not talk about that. Let's actually talk about my experience with this game, because I am a person who has spent thousands of hours in the Borderlands series, more so specifically Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2 is definitely one of my favorite games of all time. I am one of the biggest Borderlands fans. I just love everything about Borderlands. I love the looting and shooting aspect of this game, and that's pretty much why you play this game, for the looting and shooting aspect. If you love looting, if you love shooting games, if you love RPGs, if you love building your character, if you love gaining experience, if you love everything I just said, then this game is definitely going to be for you. Now let's talk about, do I like this game? Do I not like this game? Coming from something like Borderlands 2, where I spent 1,000+ hours in the game, what I can say is right now, like I said before, I'm about 25, 26 hours into this game, and what I can say is I'm not disappointed with this game, but I'm not blown away as well, if that makes sense. Basically, the best way to summarize Borderlands 3 is it's just going to be more Borderlands. Is that necessarily a bad thing? No, that's not necessarily a bad thing, having more of what you already like, but I wish Gearbox would have taken this game to the next level. What do I mean by that? Well, I wish Gearbox would have put some type of new mechanic to really make you feel like this was a new Borderlands game. Sure, we got new guns to play with, we got new classes to explore, we got a new storyline, we got new places to visit and things like that. So of course it is fresh in that way, but in terms of the main core mechanics, where you're shooting, where you're picking up loot, where you're customizing your character, it really doesn't feel all too different than something like a Borderlands 2. So if you played Borderlands 2, if you played Borderlands 1, if you played the pre-sequel, then you're really gonna feel right at home with this game. That's one thing nice about this game as well. If you haven't played Borderlands 2 for quite some time, or Borderlands the pre-sequel for quite some time, and you're thinking about jumping back into Borderlands, or if you want to play this game, it's going to be very familiar with you. You can see on screen a lot of the same elements are borrowed from all the other Borderlands games. You can see the HUD's the same, with your health and your shield and your active ability and the map and the way this game functions and the way this game looks. It's going to feel all too similar to some of the other games, and that's where kind of the problem actually occurs when it comes to this game, because some people may say having too much of the same thing can get kind of kind of boring, can get kind of repetitive and things like that. And I understand where those people are coming from, because you do have to realize you are paying $60 for this game, and at the end of the day, if you put in a buttload of hours into Borderlands 2, then I understand why you may think this game is not going to knock your socks off, and you may not even think this game is worth $60. Now, if you're a new person who never played the Borderlands game, this game is not going to change your opinion. If you're coming from something like a Borderlands 2 or any of the other games in the series and you didn't like them, then I feel like this game is not going to change your mind on Borderlands. But like I said, going back to new players of this game, if you are a new player and you're trying to get into Borderlands, I think this game is easily worth every penny of $60. I think it's justifiable. This game is very fun, and that's what Borderlands was all about. It was all about the funness, and this is some of the best fun you can ever have in a video game to date. Just everything just feels right about the shooting, everything feels right about running around, everything is just right about this game, and this game will give you a lot of content. And of course, they already have DLCs planned for this game, so this game will have number of DLCs coming out for this game, and that's something Borderlands always did right when it comes to this series. They always knew how to make a very fun game with a lot of replayability as well. I want to touch on that as well. If you never played a Borderlands game, then you may not know this, but this game gives you a lot of content. This is one of the most replayable games probably of all time, because it's kind of like any other RPG like Skyrim, Fallout, any other type of these open world kind of games that are like this, because you have different classes you can play with. Even if you have the same class class, you can always play the class differently just due to the different skills and abilities these characters has. And this game is a game where you're not going to be able to max your character out with just one playthrough. I think the game's about 40 to 45 hours, a lot of people are saying, so it's fairly long. But the nice thing with Borderlands is it was always a game that they meant for you to replay, and since you're going to replay this game, that's where all your time in Borderlands is going to be spent replaying the game, because that's where you really play in like new different modes, because they have new modes that unlock after you play the game. So basically you play the game in like a new game plus, where you're actually going through the same exact game, but you're playing it with your leveled up character, and all the loot and all the guns that you currently got previously in your last playthrough will carry over. So that's something nice Borderlands does. But going back really quickly to is it worth $60? I can't really say that for you personally. You'll have to make that decision for yourself. I understand it could be worth $60 to some people, and I can see it not being worth $60 to some people. And this is a game I feel like you don't have to buy on day one, or you don't even have to buy even the first month this game is out, because this game will drop in price. It'll probably go down to $40, $35. You'll have to wait a little bit, but this game will go down in value. And this is a game I feel like, especially if you played some of the older Borderlands game, you can wait a while and then really pay cheaper for this game and then play this game, and you're not missing out on anything. It's not a game I can say you have to buy on day one, because there's a lot of games that do come out. They're mind-blowing games and things like that, and I feel like you really need to jump on the bandwagon as fast as possible, and you really need to get in on the hype. But this game, I don't feel like you really need to get in on the hype just because, well, it's new, everyone's playing it, everyone's talking about it. It's just more Borderlands. Sorry if I keep repeating myself in this video. It really does seem like all I'm saying is more Borderlands, and that's true though. It's just more Borderlands. One thing I do want to talk about in this video, I want to talk about some of the sound designs in this game. One thing I really want to talk about is the gun sounds in this game. Now, when I do these videos, most of the time I don't actually have any sound going, so you won't hear any sound from the game. Unfortunately, I don't want that to be the case, so you're not distracted from my voice and me talking about the game. But one thing this game is kind of hit or miss on is the gun sounds. One thing I really do love about shooting games is the gun sounds. How well are the gun sounds? And in this game, like I said, it's hit or miss. Like the gun you're seeing on screen, for instance, doesn't sound too good. Some guns sound amazing, some guns sound just okay, and then some guns like this gun sound extremely bad. And since this gun sounds extremely bad, it's not actually a gun I would use for the long run. I like the design of this gun, excuse me, but I don't like the way this gun sounds, and that's something I really do feel like Gearbox really missed on this Borderlands game. Is the gun sounds are very hit or miss, and I feel like with the other Borderlands games, I really never had that problem where some guns didn't sound right or some guns just sounded okay. I feel like a lot of these guns just don't sound right. The clips they used for the sound effects and things like that just aren't too good. Outside of the gun sounds though, almost every other thing in this game sounds okay. There's nothing bad about the sound design or the music or anything like that. It's really just the gun sounds to me, and that is just a personal preference, of course. Some people don't mind bad gun sounds, or some people don't. It just depends on gun sounds in general, but for me, a lot of these guns just don't sound right. They're either too loud, too low, or they sound weak or something like this. Like this gun just sounds really weird. It doesn't feel like it fits the gun in any way, and I really don't like the sound clip they use for that. But there's that, and I really had to get that off my chest. Now, also, since I've been talking about Borderlands 2 and I put in like 1,000 hours into Borderlands 2, something really crazy like that, I wanted to touch on something else as well. Is this game a better game for me personally than Borderlands 2? Honestly, I'm only, like I said, 26 hours, and even though I put in 26 hours and that's still something into the game, I'm pretty far into my playthrough as we speak. What I can say is I can't really say if this is better for me than Borderlands 3, coming from a hardcore fan of this series, because, well, like I said before, this is just more Borderlands. And since this is just more Borderlands, it's hard for me to say that I like this flat out better than Borderlands 2. When Borderlands 2 came out, it really did a lot of things right for the Borderlands series, coming from Borderlands 1. And that game really changed me in a lot of different ways. And there was a lot of mechanics in that game that weren't actually in Borderlands 1. But there's not a lot of mechanics that are new to this specifically over something like Borderlands 2 or even the pre-sequel. So it's hard to say if I like this game as we speak more than Borderlands 2 at the moment. I may make a video once I beat the game talking about my final thoughts with this game, and I can finally tell you guys that I like this game overall more than Borderlands 3 or excuse me, Borderlands 2. Sorry about that. One thing I do like about this game, I do have to say more than something like Borderlands 2, is the fact that I love more of the guns in this game. I think there's more variety in guns for me personally, and I also like the fact that I love the reload animations more here with more of the guns. One thing I love about gun games in general is the fact that I do love really good reload animations, and there's some pretty awesome reload animations in this game, which I think makes me want to say that I may love this game more than something like Borderlands 2. One nice thing this game does nicely than Borderlands 2 is the fact that you have more variety in the enemies in this game. On top of the variety of enemies in this game, as well as that, you do explore more worlds and there's more variety in the locations you do visit. So maybe for me, just talking about those things alone, maybe I would say this game might be better than Borderlands 3. Now, when it comes to classes specifically, you may be asking me that as well, because I am a hardcore fan. And honestly, the classes in Borderlands 3 are very hit or miss. When I first played Borderlands 2, I was pretty much happy with most of the classes, and I thought most of them were awesome. But here, I'm a little bit disappointed, just coming from a Borderlands veteran. I don't like all the classes. Some classes I like and some classes I don't like, but in general, I haven't found that one class that's really blowing me away to where I'm saying, wow, I love this class and this class is badass and this is the best class Borderlands ever had. I don't feel that way with any of the classes in this game. It's unfortunate that it's just that way for me. But yeah, that pretty much wraps up this video. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say when it comes to Borderlands 3. If I was going to rate this game outright though, I would easily rate this game a 9 to 9.5. But just because it's more Borderlands and this game does have performance issues, at least on the base PS4. I'm assuming the base Xbox One S, not the X, does have problems as well. I'm just going to say it right now, 9.5. I could even go down to 8 to be honest, because it's just more Borderlands. So putting it at an 8 or an 8.5 wouldn't be as bad as well. I just can't give this a perfect score. Anyway, guys, this is Wayne from My Tech News, signing out.